The world held its breath. 13 children trapped 4 kilometers deep. The rescue operation that made history. June 23, 2018. 12 bicycles parked at the entrance of Tam Luang Cave in northern Thailand were the first sign of a disaster scenario. 12 football players aged between 11 and 16, along with their 25-year-old coach Ekapol, had entered the cave for an ordinary team activity. Within just 1 hour, what started as a fun adventure would turn into a global crisis. The monsoon rains began earlier than expected, and floodwaters rapidly filled the entrance tunnels. The children and their coach were trapped in the dark depths of one of the world's most dangerous caves. No one knew where they were. No one knew if they were still alive. And no one knew how to rescue them. Day 1. Missing. Mae Sai was a small border town in the northernmost part of Thailand. Everyone knew each other here, and Mu Pa, the Wild Boars football team, was considered the town's pride. The team's coach, Ekapol Chantawong, was 25 years old, but he treated the children not just as a coach, but as an older brother. He himself had had a difficult childhood. His family had died young due to illness, and Ekapol had lived in a Buddhist monastery for years. Perhaps that's why he had formed a special bond with these children from poor families in the town, some of whom were stateless. That Saturday, after training, Ekapol wanted to surprise the children. "Let's go to Tam Luang," he said excitedly. "It'll be good for team spirit." Tam Luang Cave was famous in the region, 10 kilometers long, mysterious, and a tourist attraction. It was especially safe to visit during the dry season. But the monsoon season hadn't started yet, had it? Around 3 p.m. in the afternoon, 13 people entered the cave. They had only a few flashlights, some food, and water with them. The plan was simple. They would go in, explore and have fun for a few hours, and return home for dinner. The children were excited. Pong, Note, Turn, T, Night, Boo, Adel, Mark, Titan, Mick, Nick, and Dom. The youngest was 11, the oldest 16. The cave system was complex. As they progressed through the main tunnel, ceilings lowered and water pools deepened. The children moved forward laughing, talking, pushing each other. Coach Ekapol led the way. No one was worried. No one had looked at the sky. Outside, the weather suddenly began to change. Dark clouds covered the sky and unexpectedly, monsoon rains began, 2 weeks earlier than normal. The rain was intense, torrential. Within minutes, waters flowing from the mountain began flooding into the cave system. Inside, the children suddenly realized something was going wrong. Water that had been ankle-deep rose to their knees within minutes. "We need to go back," shouted Ekapol. But it was too late. When they returned the way they came, they saw the main tunnel filling with water. Brown, murky water was rising rapidly. The moment of panic came, but Ekapol tried to stay calm. "We need to go forward," he said. "We need to find higher ground." 4 hours, they continued to advance through dark tunnels that narrowed and widened. Feet were slipping, everyone was soaked, the cold was freezing their bones. Flashlight batteries were running low. Finally, about 4 kilometers from the entrance tunnel, they reached a small ledge called Pattaya Beach, a natural platform formed by rock. This place was dry and above the water level. They couldn't go any further. "We'll wait here," said Ekapol. "We'll leave when the waters recede." No one knew at that moment that this wait would last 18 days. Day 2. The world finds out. In the morning, the 12 bicycles at the cave entrance were discovered. The children's families panicked. Local police immediately tried to enter the cave, but the waters were so high they couldn't even pass the first tunnel. Entering without diving equipment was suicide. The news spread rapidly. First local media, then national channels, then international news agencies covered the story. Headlines reading, "13 people trapped in cave in Thailand," appeared in the world press. The hashtag Thai Cave Rescue went viral on social media. The Thai government understood the seriousness of the situation. Prime Minister Prayut Chan-o-cha personally came to the region. SEAL divers from the Thai Navy were mobilized. But when they entered the cave, they understood how terrible the reality was. The water was murky, visibility was zero, the tunnels were like a labyrinth. This cave, dangerous even under normal diving conditions, had now turned into a death trap. Inside, the children and Ekapol sat in darkness. They had turned off the lights to preserve flashlight batteries. They were hungry. They were thirsty. But Ekapol tried to give them hope. He taught them meditation techniques he had learned during his years at the monastery. "Stay calm," he said. "Conserve your energy. Someone will come." They learned to drink fresh water dripping from Pattaya Beach. They meditated to cope with hunger. Ekapol told them stories, they played games, they kept each other's spirits up. When the youngest wanted to cry, the older ones comforted them. They were like a family. Days 3 to 7. International mobilization. Experts from around the world began flowing into Thailand. From England came John Volanthen and Rick Stanton, experts in cave diving. These two were the world's most experienced cave rescue divers. Australia, America, China, Myanmar, hundreds of volunteers came from dozens of countries. The cave entrance turned into a massive operation base. Tents were erected, a command center was established, a media headquarters was set up. Hundreds of journalists were broadcasting live worldwide. Local people brought food, carried water. Buddhist monks prayed. But the main problem still couldn't be solved: the water levels inside the cave. Pumping was done every day. Huge water pumps had been installed and millions of liters of water were being expelled per hour. But as long as the rain continued, the pumps were insufficient. Elon Musk heard about the situation on Twitter and assigned SpaceX engineers to design a mini-submarine. NASA offered technology. The Thai army drilled hundreds of holes on top of the mountain. Maybe they could reach from above. A group of engineers made plans to redirect the water by flooding the fields at the foot of the mountain. These farmers agreed to sacrifice their crops. On the seventh day, British divers John and Rick made a historic attempt. After hours of dangerous diving, after passing through kilometers of dark tunnels, they finally reached Pattaya Beach. When their flashlights appeared above the water's surface, they heard the children's voices. "How many of you?" John asked in English. 13, came the answer from the darkness. Adil was the only child on the team who spoke English. 13? Brilliant. The video camera recorded everything. Dirty, thin but alive 13 faces. The children were amazed. "What day is it today?" they asked. 9 days had passed. "We're very hungry," said Little Note. It was his birthday. He had spent his birthday in the cave. John and Rick gave them food packages, water, and thermal blankets. But one thing was immediately clear: they couldn't take them out right away. This was just the initial contact visit. When the news reached the world, excitement exploded. "They're alive." But the joy was short-lived because experts revealed the terrible truth. Rescuing them was even harder. Days 8 to 10. Impossible plans. The map of the cave was spread on the table. Between the entrance and Pattaya Beach were dozens of narrow passages. Some places were so narrow that divers had to remove their oxygen tanks. Visibility was zero, brown muddy water. The water current was strong. And the distance, 4 kilometers of underwater labyrinth. Experts gathered. Options were discussed. Option 1. Wait. It would take months until the monsoon season ended. Could the children endure that long? Oxygen levels were dropping. Option 2. Drill from above. Hundreds of holes were drilled, but finding the exact location of the cave system was impossible. The mountain was 1,000 meters thick. Option 3. Teach them diving. However, most of the children couldn't swim. How would you take them through a route that even professional divers struggled with? Debates heated up in meetings. Some experts said, too risky, we should wait, while others said, we're running out of time, we have to go in. The oxygen in the air was being analyzed. Oxygen levels in the cave were dropping dangerously. Then an Australian anesthesia expert, Dr. Richard Harris, proposed a radical idea: let's sedate the children. It shocked everyone. He proposed sedating the children completely unconscious, and carrying them out in the diver's arms. No child would move, panic, or have to think about breathing. The divers would carry them like cargo. This has never been done, someone said. Too dangerous, said another. If we give the wrong sedative dose, they could die. If they swallow water, they'll drown. They could get hypothermia from the cold. But do we have another choice? Said Dr. Harris. After long debates, it was agreed. This was a risky, perhaps crazy plan, but it was their only chance. Day 11. Tragedy. While operation preparations continued, terrible news came. Saman Gunnan, a retired SEAL from the Thai Navy, ran out of oxygen while returning after placing oxygen tanks inside the cave and drowned. Deep sadness and shock were experienced in the rescue camp. Saman was 38 years old, married, and had come as a volunteer. His death was a painful reminder of how dangerous this operation was. If an experienced diver could die there, what would happen to the children? But Saman's death also increased determination. In his name, we must rescue the children, said the commander. Inside, the children were unaware of the situation. Divers continued to bring them food, but everyone knew time was running out. New rain forecasts were coming, and if there was another big rain, the cave could be completely submerged. Days 12 to 15. Rehearsal. Diving teams were formed. World-famous cave divers, Thai SEALs, international experts. More than 100 people in total would take part in the operation. Backup plans were made for each child. Dr. Harris and Dr. Craig Challen, anesthesia experts, calculated dosages. The amount of sedative was adjusted according to each child's weight. Full face masks would be placed on the children, and their arms would be taped to their bodies for safety. Teams tested the route repeatedly. Rope lines were set up. A station was created every 25 to 50 meters. Here divers would change, tanks would be renewed, children would be checked. On the 15th day, a new danger emerged: weather. Meteorology teams predicted a major storm in the coming days. If that storm came, no one would be able to enter the cave for weeks. The decision was made: the operation would begin the next day. Day 16. Operation begins. First group. July 8, 2018, Sunday morning. The world held its breath. At 10 a.m., the first diving team entered the water. The plan was, 4 children would be extracted each day. The strongest and calmest children would go first. If there was a problem, the operation could be stopped. Inside, Dr. Harris explained the situation to the children. Some were scared. Ekapol comforted them. "You'll be safe, I promise you." The first 4 children were selected: Note, Nick, Turn, and Knight. Each one received a sedative injection individually. Within minutes, they fell asleep. Full face masks were fitted, their arms were taped. Divers lowered them into the water. The sight was unforgettable, an unconscious child, in a diver's arms, diving into dark water. Checks were made at every station along the route. Pulse, breathing, temperature. If the sedative effect was wearing off, an additional dose was given. The water was so cold there was a risk of hypothermia. Some passages were so narrow the child had to be turned sideways. At 5:40 p.m., the first child emerged from the cave. He was taken by ambulance to the hospital. Then the second, third, fourth. By 7 p.m., all 4 children were safe. They were checked at the hospital, tired, thin but alive. The world went crazy with joy. But 9 people were still inside. Day 17, second group. July 9th, Monday. The operation was repeated. This time Pong, T, Boo, and Mick were extracted. The procedure was the same, but the teams were now more experienced. Still, every second was full of tension. One child's mask took in water, it was immediately changed. Another sedative was too effective, the dose was adjusted. By evening, 4 more children were rescued. Now only 4 children and Ekapol remained inside: Dom, Mark, Adel, Titan, and their coach. Day 18, finale. July 10th, Tuesday. The last group. This time not only the children but Ekapol would also come out. Also, 3 Thai SEAL divers and a medical officer who had stayed behind while setting up equipment in the cave would be extracted. The operation began early in the morning. First the 4 children, Dom, Mark, Adel, and Titan. Then Ekapol. The coach was crying as he received the sedative. "I'm sorry to the families," he said. "I put them in danger." The divers comforted him. "You're a hero. You kept them alive." At 5 p.m., the last child came out. At 7 p.m., Ekapol was safe. At 8 p.m., the SEAL divers came out. After 18 days, Pattaya Beach was empty. At the cave entrance, hundreds of people were applauding, crying, hugging. Millions around the world were shedding tears in front of their televisions. The impossible had become real. Aftermath. The children and Ekapol remained in quarantine in the hospital for 2 weeks. There was a risk of infection. Their families could see them through glass. When they finally left the hospital, they were famous worldwide. They were the subject of films and documentaries. They were invited to Manchester United Stadium. They appeared on Ellen DeGeneres' show. But they were still the same children. They returned to Mae Sai, continued playing football. Ekapol continued coaching. A monument was erected for Saman Gunnan. A medal was given to his family. His heroism will never be forgotten. The thousands of people involved in the operation, divers, volunteers, engineers, ordinary people, all made this miracle possible. Some called it the Thailand miracle. Others, the triumph of human will. The entrance to Tam Luang Cave is now closed, so that no one else gets lost inside. But the story lives on. Even in humanity's darkest moments, hope, courage, and unity can create miracles. And that's how 13 people, 12 children and a young coach, survived the world's most dangerous cave rescue operation. 18 days in darkness, 4 kilometers deep, but they never lost hope. The world united, thousands of people pitched in, and the impossible became real. If this story touched you too, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because every week we bring you more incredible, true stories. Write to us in the comments. If it were you, how would you have endured in that cave? And if you love these kinds of courageous stories, check out our other videos on the right side of the screen. See you in the next video, and remember, hope never dies.